we're picking up where we left off yesterday. After the temple is built, Solomon then moves in the furnishings and also the Ark of the Covenant into the temple. Now the Ark had been at Gibeon awaiting its final residence since it was brought back during the time of David. And the Ark was brought into the temple during the Feast of Tabernacles, a time for the Israelites to remember God's faithfulness in bringing them out of Egypt. I believe this wasn't a coincidence, actually. The Ark was transported in the correctly prescribed manner, and innumerable sacrifices were made on the way as it was carried by the priest and the Levites. Now, I believe that this would have been to avoid what had happened before, if you remember, during the time of David, when people died for stretching out their arms to touch the ark because they were transporting it on oxen and all, instead of it being carried by the Levites as God has commanded. So here we see no incident, and then we see, which was very interesting, innumerable animals, that the animals that were sacrificed were so many. So it shows that Solomon was taking no chances. When the ark was deposited in the Holy of Holies, almost immediately God's presence signified by a cloud filled the room. It was so thick and so heavy that the priests couldn't stand to continue to perform their duties. Now, afterwards, Solomon offered a prayer of dedication after he had blessed the whole assembly of Israel. In his prayer, he realizes the conditions of God's promise, and that simply is obedience. Obedience was the only way that they would access the blessing and the prosperity, the perpetuity of David's line, and he said so while he was offering his prayer. His lengthy prayer acknowledges that God's presence was in the temple, but God himself wasn't confined to the temple, and if he knew that because he said that. God is omniscient. He dwells both inside and outside of time and space. He asked God to judge between the Israelites in their daily interactions and day-to-day dealings. He also anticipates a time when the Israelites would sin against God and bring about covenant curses, and he asked for God's forgiveness and direction when that time comes. Almost like he knew, but then he should know, because he himself as a king had a divided heart. In 41, he asked God to make himself known to the foreigners, that's those that didn't know him, so that they may fear him and do like the Israelites do. Finally, he blesses the people in a beautiful benediction, and then they had a 2-week celebration after a huge sacrifice had been made to commemorate the dedication of the temple. Here's my hashtag getting to know God lesson. God isn't only the keeper of the covenant of Israel, but he's the one who goes beyond our expectations of his promises. In verse 27, Solomon said, "But will God really dwell on earth?" If only he knew that not only would God dwell on earth for a time, that's Jesus, after he has redeemed mankind, he would give us his spirit to be with us until he comes again to conquer the evil one and dwell with us for eternity. How awesome is that for hope? Thank you for joining me today, and as a matter of fact, for joining me as long as you have, keeping up with this whole Bible study. I think it's amazing. Tomorrow we'll go to Chronicles 6 to 12, and then we're back to the Psalms. We'll be reading or sharing lessons from Psalm 136. I look forward to seeing you here. Have a good day. Bye.